Okay, you got this big trip planned for this weekend or next weekend, a fishing trip. You got time off work and you're going fishing, right? Are you going to catch some fish? Oh no. There's been times we've all gone out, made our plans, went out, and the fish weren't biting. We didn't catch anything. So, was that because the fish weren't biting? Or is that because we're not a very good fisherman? Which is it? What if I could tell you that I could almost guarantee you're going to catch fish? Would you listen? Stay tuned. So, you're going fishing this weekend. Do you know where you're going fishing at? Have you thought about it? I'm sure you have. Did you know? Let's just say you're going to the lake, the local reservoir. Did you know if you enter the name of that lake on the internet and type in, for instance, El Dorado Lake, El Dorado, Kansas, depth map, enter that into, with your lake, enter that into the internet, see what comes up. You can get several maps of the topography of that lake. And then with those maps, you're going to have a huge advantage. You know why? There was a guy named Buck Perry. You got to write that name down. Buck Perry. In the 1950s, early 60s, he came up with a theory called structure fishing. Structure fishing is locating fish according to the structure of the lake. And since you got the topography map, now it's going to be much easier to locate the fish. This structure fishing is an attempt to pattern the fish's daily life as to what they do and where they're going to be. What I'm talking about is most of the time, most of the day, the fish are in what he called their sanctuary, which is basically deeper water. The fish are dormant. They're not really pursuing food, but a couple times a day at least, the fish will want to eat. So he will go to where he feeds. And where he feeds is where the food is, right? It can be shallower water. He's in pursuit of, bait fish. So, if you can locate where the sanctuary is, and you can locate where the closest place to the food is, there's a path in between. And this path he identifies the path with specific parameters. With this knowledge, you can either go where the food is, or you can get on this path and get them on their way to the food. Make sense? It's called structure fishing. So, in Buck Perry, in the description is a link for a PDF on a report he wrote. It's just an abbreviated report. You can download it. Download that, read about it. His terminology is a little different than what you're used to. Read about structure fishing, then go on YouTube. Do you know how to use YouTube? Go on YouTube, type in structure fishing. You'll see hundreds of videos describing how to structure fish, and it'll interpret what you just read. That will give you a huge advantage between the map and what you just learned. Next, have you checked the weather on what's happening on the day you're going fishing? Is the wind going to be blowing? What direction is the wind coming from? What's the temperatures? Are we fishing in the middle of winter? Are we fishing in the summer? If you're fishing in the winter, is it cold that day? Did we have a front come in? Did it rain? Things like this. If the wind's blowing, I fish in a kayak and I fish for catfish and I love it. But if the wind's blowing, it can be treacherous depending on the wind. Last week I went out and we had a 15-mile-an-hour wind with gusts up to 25. Well, what that means out on a reservoir, if you're out in the open, you can have 1.5 to 2 foot waves. That gets a little sketchy for kayak fishermen. But I had to go fishing. I needed to go fishing. And I didn't have any other days that week to go fishing. So you know what I did? I went fishing. But with the knowledge of the wind direction, I made it possible. I had a southwest wind, so I went fishing and I placed the dam between me and the wind. The dam was to the southwest. The dams are big and tall. They block the wind. So I could fish the first 100 feet from the dam with no wind problems. So with the weather conditions, you can plan your trip out and still be successful, even under bad conditions. Next, are you going to be fishing off the bank? Are you going to fish from a boat? Are you going to fish from a kayak? If you're fishing from a boat or a kayak, the last time out, did you have any problems? Now is the time to resolve anything before you go. Did you charge your batteries? Do you need to do any maintenance? Is there anything that you took off there that you need to replace? Get it done now. Your fishing gear. Are they in need of anything? Is any of your reels needing new line? Do you need new leaders tied on? Do you have all the hooks and sinkers and so forth, the hardware that you need? Did you use it all up? Did you run out? Are you low? Whatever. Resolve that now. Don't go out and find out, oh, I don't have any hooks. That's not going to help you. Maybe now's the time where you're sitting at home to cut everything off and retie, put new leaders on. I like to make everything as ready as possible so that when I get in the kayak, I can just hook some bait on and a few weights and go. Don't waste time on the water, tying, retying, putting on hooks, that sort of thing. That just wastes valuable fishing time. So now you have a depth map, right? And you kind of know where the holes are. You kind of know all the channels, the ledges, and the lake. Now you can put forth a plan on how you're going to fish. Whether you're from the bank or whether you're from a kayak or a boat. If you're from a bank, how deep is the water to how close you've been fishing? You might find out that where you've been fishing, you might be fishing in 3-4 foot of water and never realized it. Which under certain conditions may be all right, but not now. So, that said, let's plan out where you're going fishing. What are you going to do about bait? Bait is usually the thing that gets me the worst. Seems like I've got what I have, the fish aren't biting on. But here's what I do. I catfish, and I will always have chicken breasts with me. I cut them up, put them in strawberry Kool-Aid, and put some garlic powder on them. I got a recipe on another video if you want to find it. I always have that with me as a backup. But I always try to have live bait or cut bait with me because I know the catfish prefer that most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. So I will always have with me a cast net. And when I'm unloading my kayak, before I take off, I throw that cast net a few times and try to get some bait fish. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's times there's just no fish, and there's times I clean it up. Last time out, I caught like a 10-pound carp in the cast net. I used to use a 4-foot cast net. That was crazy. Carp ended up bait. If I can't get bait there, I will always have worms with me. I'll go out in the garden the day before and I'll dig 10, 15 worms up and take them with me. As I'm going out to where I'm going to fish, A lot of times I'll pass over a school of bait fish, and you can drop a worm in on them and you'll pull them out, guaranteed almost every time. You know, my next trip, I'm going to a place I haven't been before. And I've looked on the map and I found the spots where I want to go fishing. But on the way to the spots, there's a forest of submerged trees. Submerged trees is a great place to be snagged, but it's also a great place to get bait fish. My game plan is I will have the chicken with me. I'll have my worms. I will try to throw the cast net before I get there, but I'm going to swing by these submerged trees. I'm going to drop some worms and I'm going to drop some jigs in there and see if I can get some bigger bait, maybe some white bass or some crappie. But I can see that because I've looked at the map. Now, the last thing I do, I'm trying to get bait. If I'm going like from the boat ramp to where I'm going to fish, I always drag or troll a Mepps spinner or a rooster tail or even a swim bait, little white swim bait. And that works quite often of catching a decent fish of some kind, a crappie, white bass, sometimes a wiper. It's another good way of trying to make yourself more productive. Another thing, don't forget this one. This is very important. I typically will go for 5-6 hours, pretty easy. In 5 to 6 hours, you're going to get hungry and thirsty, right? Take a lunch. So I will take one of those soft, insulated lunch boxes. I'll throw a sandwich in there, a couple sandwiches, and some other things. But I'll always take a drink. And what I do is I'll take water bottles that you buy at the store. I'll freeze them the night before. I'll take 2 or 3 frozen water bottles, or if it's really 100 degrees outside, I'll take more than that. I'll throw them in my little soft lunch box and it keeps my food cold, but I also have a cold drink the whole time. I just bring them out, let them melt, drink them. So I'm always got a cold drink. The other thing I do that I find quite relaxing, because when you're catfishing, many times you're just sitting there waiting for the catfish to bite, right? So you kick your legs up, you lean back, relax. Here's what I like to do. Sunflower seeds. I go through a bag of them every time I go. I can sit back, kick my feet up, relax, and eat sunflower seeds. Very relaxing. So last but not least, every time you go out, get better. What I mean is remember where you fished, what happened, was it good or bad? Remember what worked, what didn't work. Also, be a Boy Scout. Be prepared. Prepare as much as possible. That way you're not messing around on the boat ramp and it leaves you more time on the water. Just ups your odds of catching fish. So in review, the difference between an ordinary fishing trip and a successful fishing trip. That successful fishing trip took planning and preparation. The ordinary fishing trip, you just showed up and you hoped you had success and you hoped on a lot of luck, right? Well, remember one thing, the most important thing. If you're fishing, you're not working. That's what I say. Good luck, guys.